Hey everyone, it's Thursday in case you didn't know. We've got data centers opening everywhere and nowhere, it seems. The witch hunt against big tech continues. And what is the future of meetings in the age of AI? All that and more on Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. Welcome. For those of you who don't know what Techstrong Gang is, this is our daily talk show at the top of our Techstrong TV schedule, where we're going to spend about 45 minutes talking about what we think is big news or interesting stories for the day. And we're joined by a roving, ever-changing group of our Techstrong Gang members. It's not ever-changing. It's actually the same people, but we rotate them in and out. And everyone gets on maybe once a week or so. We've got a great gang lineup today for you. Let me introduce you to them. First of all, our man in Silicon Valley, roving editor extraordinaire, Jon Swartz, is joining us from Silicon Valley. Hey, Jon, how are you?
I'm good, Alan. It's good to be with all of you.
Good to have you. And then we've got our Colorado twins from Boulder area. She is an analyst extraordinaire with Futurum Group, Camberley Bates. Hey, Camberley, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Okay. You find out interesting things about people. We found out that Camberley's husband is a big Yankee fan from the Bronx. So extra points to Camberley and her husband and the whole family here. I knew we made the right decision inviting her onto the gang.
We're going to swap him out for one of these days.
Yeah, no, it was a good thing.
Industry, so you guys can talk Yankee baseball.
Only when the Yankees win.
Take somebody brave to marry somebody from the Bronx and a Yankees fan. That's all I got to say.
I give her extra points.
You've got some metal.
And then also joining us from Colorado, it's our CTO and Futurum CTA, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. I don't get to do this very often, but you will notice we do. The west of the Mississippi has you outnumbered this time. Yay!
Yes, you do.
Go West Coast.
Go West, young men and women. That's okay. And, we're here in our Boca Raton headquarters studio for Techstrong, and I'm joined by our Chief Content Officer, also hailing from the Bronx and a Yankees fan. It's Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, welcome.
That's how you get on this show, right?
It is a fast track, I've heard. There's like an underground railroad from the Bronx and Yankee Stadium right down here to Boca Raton. Anyway, so guys, we've got some interesting stories today. We're going to kick it off with data. There's a good data or data, tomato. I usually say data. But every once in a while, I throw in a data.
I don't know.
Go figure.
It's a data center and it's data content.
Yes. Two different words.
Side of the pond you're on. Adidas.
Did they really say Adidas? Mm-hmm. I always say it. Okay. Anyway, we're talking data centers everywhere. We had this article, well, actually two articles in Techstrong ITSM. They're in the notes. Mike, lead us off on this.
All right, well, let's get started here. We have a couple of stories on Techstrong ITSM that's talking about, there are not enough vacancies in data centers, and people are trying to find interesting ways to build these new data centers and maybe share them. And Camberley, let's jump into you. Is this all because of Gen AI and CPUs and GPUs are in demand because of those applications, or is there something else at work here? And does all this portend maybe some price hikes on cloud services because supply and demand are out of whack?
Well, I took a look at the data that was there. I didn't get, I don't have the full data set that these guys had to looking at the data center. But I suspect it is. I suspect it has to do with what's going on with the GPUs and bringing those GPUs in because they are consuming a huge amount of capacity. I'm also wondering, a week ago, we talked about the possibility of repatriation, of some repatriation as well. And so there's possibility that's going to be cranking up. But I would think that, that's kind of what is pressing the pedal right now in terms of the building out of the data centers. The other piece of it, I would think, is the geographic locations. and having the sovereignty of data centers needing to be in country. That's putting a crunch on the requirements for build out of data centers as well. But that's not totally what's going on in Virginia, which is kind of running out of power right now.
Oh, sure. I'm reminded back in the .com days, I helped start what we called back then an ASP, an application service provider named Interliant. And part of it, we started as a hosting provider and then moved into ASP, and we operated our own data centers. One in Tysons Corner, Virginia, an old AOL facility that was pretty big. Had a big one in Atlanta. One in Paris, London, and I don't think we ever opened the Silicon Valley one. But the interesting thing is back then, and this is 1998, 99, we had all these forecasts for the next 25 years of data center growth. And, it was through the roof. We weren't going to be able to build data centers fast enough. And, and then the .com bubble burst. And all of a sudden we had so much extra capacity in data centers and dark fiber. I then started, Mitchell and I, two of the three co-founders of a company called Still Secure out in Boulder, Louisville to be exact. And I remember driving through Interlaken in those days. I don't know if you've ever been to Interlaken by the Omni Resort near the bar in the mall. Level 3 was there. And it used to be all the storage places there. And there was so much angst over all of these empty data centers because we were never going to fill up all that data center space, it seemed. And all the dark fiber that when were we going to light that up? And here we are now. We finally, 25 years later, we've filled it up. I think there's two things here, though. Number one is the hyperscalers, the cloud, right? Your AWS, Google, Microsoft, Oracle. How many data centers have they lit up? And their data centers are truly hyperscale. But then I think you have the rack spaces and your colo centers. There's a thriving business. You and I met a ton of them down here in South Florida, who are having a thriving business in co-location data centers. And they're not small rinky-dink data centers. They're pretty big.
And they're everywhere.
And they are everywhere. So, as my biggest issue, though, is where are we getting the electricity to cool them down, power them up, turn them on, light them up? Right. And we don't have Bonnie here, but Bonnie Schneider, but the sustainability of these data centers, I think, becomes a real issue.
I think, Alan, part of this is recognition around data. We talked a little bit about this before. It's expensive and difficult to move data around. And if your core data from your whatever manufacturing or inventory system may be running on a mainframe or some local application in your private data center, maybe you're thinking about doing other apps there, or maybe AI apps, of course, too, in combination with that. So I remember the time you're talking about the Interliant and leading into Still Secure, and there was such an overbuild. We saw this arbitrage opportunity of unused excess data center space. And maybe that was the early forming of the cloud in some way. But that evaporated pretty quick. I think these situations change significantly. And if cash becomes even a greater crunch, then I think we'll see less investment in local data centers if cash flow is an issue for companies. So it's not all a pendulum. We're not swinging the pendulum all the way back to local data centers. I think there's some measured decisions about what do we want to do locally in our own world.
Camberley, let me ask you this, though. Geography plays a role in this because for a while there, we were like, oh, we're just going to build all these data centers in remote locations and they'll be next to rivers and there'll be cheap power. But then, if you look at what's going on in Virginia, we want the data center as close as possible to an internet exchange, and that's about latency at the end of the day. How much does that drive decisions about where these data centers are going to be built? Because you could theoretically put them almost anywhere, but the issue is what kind of data center goes where.
I think significantly, you're looking at the latency. I mean, there's a story that I think it was probably 10 years ago when I believe it was the trading that they established fiber optic line between Chicago and New York. And it was a straight line. They were not going to do this. They were going to do an absolute straight line to take every bit of latency out of that network as possible for the trading purposes. I know of a mining company that had moved a lot to the cloud and then hit the wall because of the internet and latency problems and reliability. Had to move everything out of the cloud back into the mining facilities to where they're located, where the mining is. The same thing as Alan was talking about, the manufacturing portion of that. The decisions are being made, from the ITSMs, per your article here, on what is the latency that they can withstand, and therefore where would this reside? But on the other hand, I have another situation where I've got media and entertainment. It's a worldwide technology. I could be filming in New Zealand. I could have developers or artists, located all over the world. And in that situation, I'm putting in a global file system that's completely global, that's completely in the cloud, because I want to be able to share, and make sure that I have, the responsiveness that I need on my computer in which I'm doing the development work. So it's really application by application about where this needs to reside. In particular, as you guys were talking about, as Mitch was talking about, where is the data and where is the compute, and how are these two things going to interact? And those decisions are, that we're being more and more aware of that. And I think the AI situation has even raised the level of awareness now.
Can I throw out some, somewhat contrarian viewpoint or just an idea or concept?
Let's hear from the Giants fan.
Oh, yeah. A few of us that are left as we roll our way to the basement. Hey, so I want to ask you about just this there's a kind of a general anxiety out here in the Valley that I'm starting to see or pick up, even some referring to the softening in the AI markets. And I think of a lot of that has to do with the forecast from NVIDIA, which I know there are these lofty expectations, but still the earnings forecast didn't meet the criteria as high as the bar is. And then we have this law or a bill that's going to be signed into law, or is expected to be signed into law any day now by Gavin Newsom, that overlooks safety issues involving large AI models. And then we're going to talk about this DOJ investigation of NVIDIA. So what I'm trying to ask is, I'm going to throw this out to all of you, is do you think these events and growing concern about AI and its ability to grow as quickly as we thought, does that impact the data center expansion? Because I want to allude to what Alan had said earlier about the .com bust. And I don't think it's anywhere close to that in terms of magnitude, but I do feel as if there's some sort of retrenchment going on out here.
Go, Camberley.
In my view, this was expected. And if we didn't plan for this, that's ridiculous. And I think what I've been expecting to see is coming up against the wall on the problem of data and being able to report out, where did I get my information? How did that information? So I regulate. They've been planning for this, or most of the companies have been planning to say, I need to be able to tell the regulators how this decision was made. That was been part of their legal oversight or their advisory oversight they've had. The second piece of it is they have been learning about what it means to manage data. And that's difficult. And we've always run into this problem when we've done data warehousing, we've done anything around data. It gets ugly. And so now we're hitting that. And so it slows down until we can get our hands around that. Once we get our hands around it, it will pick back up and go. But to me, this was an expected slowdown. We're going to see a slowdown in implementation of it and I figured we hit this now, and then we're going to be kind of slowish until the summertime.
So it's inevitable, in other words, right? These other extenuating circumstances are just, something on the side as well.
Right. And if the investors can't figure that one out.
Well, yeah, they're not the most rational people, I'll be honest.
Yeah. I did some just quick thoughts on Jon and Camberley. What you're saying is number one, this idea of AI market softening, only if you had irrational exuberance, to quote a phrase, to begin with, right? I mean, like the whole thing of NVIDIA losing, I think it was 9% or something they dropped, on a quarter where they exceeded the street estimates, they blew out the earnings, right? The profit over and above earnings as well as top line, and they still took a spanking. Well, either the street's estimates were widely undervalued, or the irrational exuberance. What were these people looking for that would allow that stock to stay up? Or is this just sort of a natural sort of
a correction?
A correction
add to some sort of right. That's
I'll be blunt about it. Trying to put like rational thought on an irrational market is like a pointless exercise.
It's impossible.
It's like it's a mood kind of betting swing. It has nothing to do with the fundamentals of what happens.
With you.
So I would like to come back to the conversation at hand. Are we going to see a situation where we are going to be over-provisioned on GPUs because we're investing too heavily because there might be not as much demand, or has the fundamentals of the investments are currently aligned going to play out as we expect because the next wave of applications will come and will develop it? It's just the timeline is a little bit off compared to what Wall Street thinks. Camberley?
Maybe contrary to some of the data that Futurum has put some data out that says this is how much this market is going to be growing. I think we're going to see balance in there, and with CPU being used for applications along with the GPUs, so we're also going to see some GPUs coming out from some of their competitors. That's going to all balance the market out. Not every application or not every use cases needs GPUs. And we saw that with some of the testing that we've done in the Signal 6.5 lab that was coordinated with Dell doing some work with their servers. And so there's some applications, and I can't remember which one it was, that we were using, more of the CPUs versus the GPUs application areas that were out there. So I think we're going to see a balance of what's going to be needed there.
Mitch, follow-up question. If you're the CTO and you're looking at what is probably going to be a price hike on cloud services because demand exceeds supply, are you going to move some applications? I mean, what kind of decisions are you going to make? A lot of your applications, maybe you put in the cloud in the first place 3 or 4 years ago because that was the only game in town. So do you revisit all that, or, what's your wallet telling you?
I think there's a natural, you have to revisit it on a regular basis, right? Because prices are changing. And the economics of it changes. The one thing that's incongruent with the AI chip argument to me is, if there's an arms race to buy AI chips, to build out your data centers in the cloud providers, how are you, unless you're one of the few massive enterprise organizations, nobody else is going to be able to get those chips either. You putting them in your own data center, you have an even greater struggle supply. And what tends to happen is in these lack of supplies, people overorder, right? Like, I'm going to put a bigger order in so I don't miss that second shipment of chips like I did the first one. And you build this backlog of over orders, over requests. And then, so at some point, there's a writing effect to Camberley's point about balance. Can be competitive, can be whatever, manufacturing more capacity is available. And all of a sudden, people start canceling those second and third orders because they don't actually need them. That was a safety valve in case the first or second one missed it. So this is a bubble where we're going to see bursting and popping, and not like, a market crashing bubble, I don't think. But this is the overinflated expectations. Every problem could be solved by AI. That's where we were 6 months ago. And everybody thought that was, we won't need developers, we won't need marketing, we won't need analysts, we won't need whatever. We just have AI do it all for us. And now we know that, of course, that none of us believed it, but we know that's not true. And that's the realization we're coming to, is like, what? This stuff's hard. This is not easy to just, I can use ChatGPT. Doesn't mean I can displace 500 people in my company tomorrow.
Yeah. Camberley, one follow-up to that. Theoretically, the benefit of being in the cloud was I could dynamically consume things. But what I hear from folks when it comes to GPUs, they're signing up for like almost year-long leases of GPUs, and they're basically reserving the capacity for as much as they can get. So is that kind of like, to me, that feels much more like, hosting.
Well, I'll let Camberley answer.
I believe I understand that is what they're doing. The other piece of that is we've been talking about how do you move the data towards where the GPU is, because that's difficult to do. So that's another part of the pipeline kind of piece of it. But yes, that they are doing that. Particularly the big guys that are doing the large language model trainings, that they need the capacity to do so. And I'll pass it over to Alan.
Yeah, I think it's a question of scarcity breeds, people headlong rushing into these things and probably over provisioning, right? If you say you can buy these glasses, but I only have one pair, and I got 10 people who want it.
I have some GPU capacity on a desktop gaming system at home that's I could rent out if anybody needs it.
That's right. I don't know what kind of GPUs those are or what GPU stands for in your world, but I don't think they're NVIDIA.
My SETI application needs your GPU. So
exactly. Hey, I think we've talked. Hey, but if anyone out there has any spare rooms they want to rent out to become a data center, might be a good time to think about it. We're going to take a break. We're coming back. Jon kind of telegraphed a little bit. NVIDIA is the latest big tech company to under the watchful eye of our government's anti-monopoly division. Let's see what it's about. You're watching Techstrong Gang. We'll be right back.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey, we're back with Techstrong Gang, and Justice Department, it's very busy these days. It just subpoenaed NVIDIA late Tuesday night, and it's looking into collecting evidence or data about its market dominance, including its acquisition of Ren AI and its ability of customers to switch to non-NVIDIA chips. This is a continuation of this ongoing investigation, and if they find enough evidence after talking to NVIDIA and some of the companies it works with, it will probably then move on to an formal investigation. Now, on top of the Department of Justice's case with NVIDIA, we have their recent victory in court against Google in federal court. They are looking at Apple, and I think the Apple Store, the App Store. The FTC, meanwhile, has sued Amazon along with 17 other states. And the FTC is now looking into OpenAI. And what I want to ask all of you is this too much? Is this over-exuberance on the part of the Department of Justice and FTC? And what impact was this going to have on the economy eventually if they keep going after these companies that are so successful that are helping run our economy?
Well, I wouldn't call it a witch hunt. I would say they're just kind of doing their job. Does the job matter? Probably not, because, at least from what you can see so far, Run.ai, the only thing AI-ish about Run.ai is the .ai after its name, because everything else is about operational software from there. There are alternatives to NVIDIA out there in the open source community. It's still early days, and usually open source is trailing somebody who drives a pace of innovation, but we see that eventually come around, and I think the market will drive that eventually. Yes, the lock-in on NVIDIA is not the hardware, it's in the software, it's in that CUDA library that they use. Nominally, that could be open source, but right now it seems like the only people who make any contributions are all NVIDIA employees, so maybe they need to kind of make that real open source and make it a community like Linux is a community. But I feel like it's a moment in time, and I'm kind of okay with the DOJ at least sending a note that says, hey, we're watching this and you should, behave better. But I'm not sure it's going to actually amount to more than a molehill.
Yeah. No, can I just, one more thing, then I'll get out of the way. I think aside from possibly fines, I don't think there are going to be structural changes to these companies. At least I hope not in the case of Google, although I think DOJ in a sense was justified in that action. But it would be interesting to see what the punitive damages are in the case of Google and in the cases of other cases that they pursue.
Yeah, I said it before. I'll say it again. I view NVIDIA, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon as strategic assets of the United States of America. And I'm not going to stand here and let this court, right, talk badly about our country, right? I'll take the Animal House Hoover approach and we'll walk out of here with Senator Blutarski. But seriously, you know what?
Stop him, he's on a roll. You know.
Yeah, don't stop me when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor, right? But seriously, AI, the battle for dominance around AI is going to be the fight of the decade coming up. He who controls, or they who control the AI are going to have an economic advantage in the world. We have, and as a country, we have all the cards. We have the winning hand here. Why would you want to?
Who is we, Kimosabe? Last time I checked, businesses do not make decisions based on.
I'm not going to respond to that Kimosabe thing. I want you to go right now.
Wow. But businesses do not make decisions based on the strategic interests of the United States. They are making business decisions based on what's good for that business.
And I count on them too.
Right.
But having a strong tech industry that leads the world and is second to none in an era where tech rules is strategically important, as strategically important as it was for the United States to control the oil industry, the energy, means of energy production and stuff like this. You know, when you look at the arc of world history, every great country, you want to call them empire, nation, whatever you want, did so because they controlled some dominant means of whether it was transportation or manufacturing, or in this computer age of computation. And we're the United States of America. We invented the internet. We've controlled the internet. It's a worldwide phenomenon. There are plenty of companies who look enviously at how we grow these companies right out there in Silicon Valley where Jon is. And
can I mention something quickly, Alan? And you're so right. When you look at the Obama administration, I remember covering him at least 3 or 4 times where he came out here. He had the famous round table where he's flanked by Zuckerberg and I think Steve Jobs. It continues. It started actually with Clinton in a certain sense. It accelerates through Obama. And then ironically, was it 2019, we start hearing about these cases from the Trump administration, only for it to escalate through the Biden administration, which I find incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, Alan, very much so. You know, these are national treasures, if you will. The other piece of it, though, is they're a national treasure because of competition. And I often say, you know, recently when I've been talking a lot about, you know, VMware or Red Hat. You know, Red Hat is dominating that Kubernetes space. We need more competition in that space. So I'm rooting for Tanzu to come up. The same thing that I'm doing here is we need more playing, because when we have competition, you're 10% better, you're 15% better, you're running that much faster, and that makes NVIDIA step up their game and not get lazy. If anything, Intel took their eye off the ball. They're now scrambling to get back there because they're threatened by AMD. That's a wonderful thing. Yeah. They're having to reinvent the company to say whatever. And I think the same thing is here. Now, is the motivation of the the right motivation of why they're doing this? Maybe, maybe not, because they view competition or capitalism maybe differently than you and I do. And that, these are all goodness for us, but not to where it's goodness for us to be able to make sure there's a balanced approach to the market and there's not a single hold on it with any company. So I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think the action, it's too early to kind of start looking at NVIDIA. Come on, the market could crash tomorrow, right? Anyway, I'll stop.
It's already
I'm going to be the cynical one here, and I'm going to
join you. Let me talk.
Go ahead, you first then.
No, I think we're talking about the right things, but calling a company a national treasure. First of all, I don't want Nicolas Cage showing up here trying to find the goddamn national treasure. So they aren't national treasures. What they are strategic assets.
They're strategic assets.
They're strategic assets.
I stand correct. It's not a national treasure. I'm sorry, NVIDIA, Jensen. You're just a strategic asset. That's all.
They're a strategic asset.
We'll have to settle for that.
And the question is, the things that we can do to help those strategic assets deliver what they can, what they bring to our country and our economy and our social fabric. There's also but do things get out of control? And my question about NVIDIA and the DOJ looking at that is, what evidence do we have that they're doing some unfair practice? Yes, they have 90% market share. Okay, you're going to get a lot of attention when you have 90% market share and a massive, capitalization, valuation of your company. So it's going to get scrutiny. And to your point, Camberley, it's too early as far as I know to say, hey, something weird's going on there. The constraint seems to be more on the manufacturing side, and let's get those chip fabs into our country so we can produce more of those and not be reliant on that strategic asset that someone else has to the degree we are now. So, but that, I don't think it's about protecting it, Alan, and don't touch it and damage it. It's a good thing, and we'll just screw it up. Yeah, we'll screw it up if we overregulate it and start mucking with it too much. But how do we get the most out of it and the most advantage that we can?
I think when times are good, all these companies, whether they're car manufacturers or chip makers or whatever, they're all like, we're heavily into globalization. We're global entities. We're making decisions for our shareholders, and it will benefit all these countries around the world. And then the minute they go broke, they're suddenly national treasures with a handout going, hey, help me, United States of America and taxpayers. And what comes back to the taxpayer exactly out of all of that is maybe how many jobs are in data centers? I don't know, but it's not nearly as many as a manufacturing plant in some other industries. So I'm kind of wondering, what's the return on investment for the United States taxpayer in these national treasures that we are investing in?
So the U.S. isn't investing.
We're bailing out Intel. That's an investment.
Well, and to Camberley's point, right, about Intel taking their eye off the ball, they did. And had they not, maybe this would be a different conversation we're having.
Yeah, that's interesting you said that too, because I remember Microsoft took its eye off the ball around the internet. Google filled the vacuum.
And it opened up to Google, and Apple got in there.
And Meta, Facebook, yes.
But let's remember that NVIDIA is not an overnight sensation. They've been at this for 20 years. Right? It's a 20-year overnight success story, number one. Number two, I'm not saying we need to bail them out. I say let the market have its way. You know what? I think Google took their eye off the ball on search. I think Google has got so AI heavy on their search that their search doesn't, a lot of people, me included, when I search on Google, I don't get results that are useful to me. I get a lot of Google AI gobbledygook, and I'd love to find a better search right now. And OpenAI just started something called Chat Search or Chat GPT Search or something. I forget the exact name of it, but I was reading an article yesterday where they're going to use AI for a Google-like search, but give you a different slant, a different search result, or a different way of looking at search results. I think that's the market. Let that happen. May the best company win. But when the government starts putting their hand on the scale because they want to make it equal, like we have some, and I'm not bringing this to affirmative action, but that we want to have some affirmative action for other companies to compete so we have a broader market. That's not market economics.
I don't think that ever works out as the government intends anyway. But that said,
of course not.
I would still say on the other side of that equation, when the government makes funds available to these companies to keep them alive, because they screwed up in this market that you just described, is that really something we should be doing? And if it is, then what are we getting out of it?
Well, let me ask you, did you agree on
the CHIP Act? And I think the CHIPS Act was really needed.
Absolutely.
Again, as a strategic asset, and it wasn't, I mean, yes, Intel has been the biggest beneficiary because they kind of pivoted around this CHIP Act. But the company, what is it, Taiwan Semiconductor, whatever.
Micron.
They've all gotten money because we want to build chip foundries here. And that's, I think that's a worthy thing. But, this takes you back to the recession, the Great Recession and the auto company bailout.
Mm-hmm.
Did the U.S. consumers get their money back with interest? Yes. Did we get a stronger auto industry as a result of it that's still U.S. based? Yes. I don't think that was a bad deal.
What are we getting out of this CHIP Act again? What's the return back to the taxpayer?
I hope we're going to get high-paying jobs at these chip foundries, and more importantly, our entire economy runs on CPUs and maybe GPUs soon. And if you have a strategic, not adversary, but a strategic competitor who decides they're going to raise the price of those or cut off your supply, it affects all of us. You can't drive your car. There's how many CPUs in the average car today?
It's also a national security issue, right?
It is
China invades Taiwan, and we're screwed for chips.
Right.
So,
and how did we get to this situation? Oh yeah, globalization. We're going to push all this stuff overseas and manufacture there. And what a great idea that was by a bunch of MBAs in Wall Street, most likely. And now here we are, screwed the other way, because to your point, we won't have semiconductors, so it is a national defense issue. But this great market thing that you described got maybe a little too far ahead of itself, and we didn't think through these strategic issues because, that was the best thing to do on Wall Street and let the market decide.
But that's our system.
Camberley, go ahead, then Mitch.
Sorry, it's Camberley.
Well, this is getting exciting.
It is exciting. Well, I mean, I was a little, probably about 6 months ago, I had a panel on the CHIPS Act, and we bringing a bunch of people that have been involved with some of the decisions that are going on there, and started looking at where this money is going. And one of the things that's wonderful about this is we're seeing Middle America. They're dropping in,
lighting up
America, partially because they're a little bit easier to get regulations through to build the facilities. I mean, you look at what's, Phoenix is blowing up with this. We see it in Texas. I'm not sure if it's going down in Florida. We probably didn't put anything.
No, nothing goes down in Florida.
Even New York State, for crying out loud. You see some major investments in New York State, up in Albany with IBM and Intel. So there's, this is spreading us across the United States. That is going to benefit the kids coming through schools. Because now I'm coming through, now you're going to see people like not just the coastlines, but to the middle of the country having tech in their backyard. And that raises all boats.
I like that idea, but
Mitchell was next.
I'm really glad you're really glad you shared that, Camberley, giving us some real insights to what the impact of the CHIP Act. And it isn't capitalism and globalism bad, or regulation is always bad. Yes, all those things can run amok, right? And that's our system of, I wouldn't call it checks and balances, but it's things get too far out of whack and some other counter reaction is necessary, right? So the chips got out of whack, we sent too much overseas, and now we're vulnerable. Okay, great. Make an investment, but I think to your point, they did it in a wise way because it's an investment that also grows economy, adds jobs, and provides national security. Now, we could have just, thrown a bunch of money, which we've done during COVID, thrown a bunch of money at companies and say, here you go, spend it, and then they all do stock buybacks. That's stupid. That kind of stuff doesn't help us. But this is just, I think it's a natural part of our system. Corporations are going to be driven by shareholder value, return to shareholders, and that doesn't always operate in the interest of other people. I mean, yes, it's competitive, but sometimes it goes a little too far and we got to pull back, or we have to give others a fair chance to play in that market too.
These add job things, I'm not so much buying. The chip manufacturing plant is highly automated and the data center is getting more and more automated. There's a standing joke that says the future of the data center is one guy and a dog, and the dog is there to keep him from touching anything. So these are not manufacturing kind of plant jobs. So yes, there may be a handful of high paying jobs. I'll buy the defense argument, but I'm not buying that these are creating jobs in middle America argument, because I think they're small.
Well, I don't have numbers at my fingertips, but they are significant.
I think they are too. But I also think that's the role of government, right? To stimulate economic development. And, like we have hub zones, right? Where minority-owned businesses get breaks and tax incentives to bring business to and bring jobs to under economically developed areas. That is a valid role of government. But look, it is what it is. I want to wrap a bow on this. It's too early to be slapping NVIDIA's wrist and try to inhibit their growth here. Let the market rule. Camberley, you mentioned we found we could use CPUs instead of GPUs for a lot of things. Let the market innovations fly here and then come back to us. But who knew we were going to get a lesson on socialism, Marxism, capitalism, economic theory, all out of here on Techstrong Gang. We'll take a break. We're going to come back and we're going to tackle is it physics and calculus next? I don't know. Maybe it's the future of meetings in AI. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Welcome back to Techstrong Gang. I'm John Schwartz. Hey, do meetings, could they be productive and even enjoyable? I don't think so, but software company Atlassian does. And last week, they agreed to buy Rewatch, a platform that records, summarizes, and organizes meetings and screen recordings via AI. The plan is to meld Rewatch with Loom, the asynchronous video messaging platform that Atlassian acquired for nearly $1 billion late last year. So basically, in addition to that, Atlassian has grand designs for Rewatch. In addition to integrating it with Loom, it intends to fold Rewatch into its Rovo AI platform, which would enable meeting notes to become Jira issues. Transcripts could also be searched within the business context. I guess the idea is to make meetings more productive and enjoyable, since that's what we seem to do all day. I don't know what you all think, but at least this is an intriguing idea, something that might have some legs to it. I don't know. What you all think?
Let me add some context to this. I met with Atlassian during Team 24 when they introduced Rovo. And Rovo, so yes, this action of buying the company, Rewatch, and they also bought Loom for video. But what that fits into, what Atlassian has done, has created a platform for AI that underpinning Rovo that actually supports all of their applications. That, they have many applications, whether it's for ITSM or for development, et cetera. And they bought Loom because they needed a way to communicate other than just through text and messages and tickets and things like that, to add some rich media to it. So what's driving that is not only an AI platform, and by platform, I'm meaning it's not 20 different AI things happening in 20 different products. It's an AI platform that can be leveraged by any one of their products in whatever ways that make sense. So Rewatch to me is another component that can access and use that AI. And what's driving the AI isn't just machine language and expert models and Gen AI. They add what they call a context or a team graph. So they know, I'm Mitch, here's my user, here's all the things I do across the ecosystem of Atlassian products and the data that I use, the data that I create, the data that I need. And the potential of this is how much of us walk away from a meeting saying, okay, that was over. I took a few notes. I forgot where I put them and nothing comes out of it, right? If you have some, not only a recording, but if you have some assets that AI turns it into some meaningful content that can be shared with others and maybe you shared and used by you in some future workflow, that I think is the potential of looking at why they're using Loom and why they're using Rewatch, is they're really working on workflow and how they can leverage AI and data and then the context of which you operate. And I think that's the secret sauce that they're building.
I think that this is a lovely way to compensate for the fact that most of the meetings are run by people who shouldn't be running the meeting. And basically what happens is they don't take the notes, they don't make the assignments, they don't remember who said what and who's responsible for what. So it will be nice to have a machine to do that. But what I really, really, really want is an AI to evaluate the purpose of the meeting in the first place and maybe say, does this discussion warrant a meeting? Because half the meetings you go to were probably pointless in the first place because either they're standing meetings that somebody feels that we ought to have every week just because, well, they're on the schedule, or B, somebody decided to call a meeting because, well, they couldn't figure out what was going on, so they called the meeting, and instead of just, calling the people who are involved in that workflow and say, where are we? And so instead, we'll just put 12 people in a room and inflict this pain in common together.
So
left us
take it from the man who doesn't log on to Slack.
Yeah,
So-
right, exactly.
Here we go. So I feel like this is like a Jane, you ignorant kind of thing going on today. But anyway,
I just picked that one up. Sorry.
so
Okay.
so
Wow,
so here-
Jane heard a reference.
Like, my husband will get along together. He uses that phrase.
Oh, wow.
so here's my take on this, with all due respect. Meetings serve multiple purposes, especially, and we saw this in COVID in spades, and it still remains because we have so many people who are remote, much like here in Techstrong Gang. The banter between Mike and I is very different than the banter between our three west of the Mississippians. And it's not because you guys live west of the Mississippi, it's because we're on this medium. Whether it's Zoom or StreamYard or whatever you're on, it's not the same as an in-person meeting. So you do need, I think, for all the things that Jon and Mitchell and Camberley have laid out, you do need someone to take the notes, summarize it, give the action items. And it would be good to have a person do that, but I frankly think it's a better use for an AI. An AI should be able to do that really well.
I disagree on that one point. The banner is good because
What a surprise.
because we're both New Yorkers and we're born to argue. So that's
Right.
why we do.
Yes, and that's true. We do that. We do it well. But and to that point, there's a cultural aspect to doing these meetings. There's a bonding that goes on, whether it's in person or in this kind of medium. There's a cultural aspect to it, and and that give and take and that banter makes for better relationships. It could be laughing, it could be not laughing, but so to say, wow, I'd rather not go to the meeting because I think they're a waste of time because we do it every week, and I'll do the cliff notes, I'll do the AI notes.
I'm not against the meetings. I am against too many meetings that don't have a purpose. And so there's just not enough. The bar isn't high enough for what the content of the meeting is. And I'm all for the social aspect of that, but there needs to be a purpose here for the meeting itself beyond the fact that you and I want to
Just talk Yankee baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
One of the frustrating things for me is so I'm going to be doing 3 meetings back to back to back. One on Teams, which I like, and then the other 2 are on Zoom, which I don't like. And one of the frustrations I have as a reporter, at least, is you want to have some sort of eye-to-eye contact with the person you're talking to, but it's really difficult to take notes when you're looking at somebody through the camera. And so consequently, that's one of the things I don't like about it. I normally talk to the person on camera for a few minutes, and then I shut it down and start taking notes on my computer. I did a meeting recently where we had an AI agent of some sort take notes and summarize, which was actually pretty good. So if Atlassian can get to any further than that, I'm all for it. I'm looking for any type of useful, productive tool to a meeting.
Yeah. Maybe, Mitch, you might have the answer to this. We have Otter AI that's out there. I've seen other attachments to Zoom to do this kind of work. What is unique or different about this that we should take away? Because we're seeing this implemented. My peers use it to take notes. I've had others, kind of email me the summary of the meetings and that sort of thing.
The difference is Atlassian is not a meeting platform. They're not Team. They're not Zoom. They're not StreamYard. They're not, Google Meet. They are a recording and an AI analysis of that recording, right, in whatever context. So maybe to Mike's point, and this is not what they've said, but they don't require that you use Atlassian's whatever meeting software because they don't have any. But they are adding Loom into more of their product. But apparently, as the way I understand it, is they'll still be able to work with Google Meet and Zoom and everybody else's third-party software. Okay, did I get that right? So I think it's what it is, Camberley, is taking what happened in that and then putting in the context of the people that were in it, that content graph, because I know about the 5 of us and I know the kind of work that we're doing across the applications that we use within Atlassian, and being able to add some context to it. Of the 5 action items, seems like 2 of those were in Mitch's camp because of what they are, because I know what he works on in what part of the ecosystem of creating software or running the data center he runs on. So I think that's the real value of this is we all have all kinds of Otter and other things that we can add to our meeting software. It's now how do you take the output of that and use it? And that's what this is really about.
So Mitch, back in our still secure days, we would call that actionable intelligence.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Odd is a recorder. Rewatch can be a recorder, a summarizer, whatever you want. You don't have to have a Zoom platform to have an Otter or whatever. It works with whatever platform. It should work, platform agnostic. But taking that information and not just recording it or bullet pointing it, but putting it into actionable intelligence.
Got it.
Right? That's money. And I think that's what Atlassian is going for here.
I agree. I agree on actionable intelligence. So and then after that, nothing else.
Okay.
Here's the problem.
Garbage in, garbage out. So we assume there's some intelligence in that.
Here's the thing that I do like about what Atlassian theoretically can do, right? So they sell the project management software that people use to organize their software development or whatever else it may be. We use some of their software here, and it's awesome. The part that would drive me crazy and still drives me crazy is, so let me get this straight. We have a project management application. Let us call a meeting of everybody so I can collect the data from you so I can enter it into this project management application. When what we really want to have happen is for that project management application to be automatically directly integrated into your DevOps workflow or whatever else it is you're working on, and it just automatically updates that project management application, thereby eliminating the need for the meeting, eliminating the need to record the meeting because the meeting was unnecessary.
That's what they're trying to do. That's what they're going after, Mike, is instead of having silos of tools and data that those tools use, is the only way to effectively use that information, because you don't understand in what context is it useful outside of that event or outside of that tool. And that's where the workflows and content graphs and things like that makes sense. So whether they're going to solve the world's problems, I don't know, but they have a big enough ecosystem of applications that they can do a lot of things. And I think they're on the right track in many, many ways. And I think potentially to the point they may be a model for others to emulate, or at least learn from and start to do some of the same things. You can ask, why isn't Microsoft doing this? They've been in this position for a long time. They've got all these applications that we all use, but you know what? They all operate independently and just show up on SharePoint. Who cares?
Because the government slaps their hand when they try to do it.
Okay. Well,
wow,
this is true.
back
You
to
have
that,
a
huh?
point there.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I will come back to this meeting thing for a second, though. So what I'm hoping out of
A
all
dog with a bone over here. Huh?
what I am hoping out of all of this is that when that data is already collected, we won't spend half of the meeting just trying to figure out what the data is. We can actually talk about the thing that matters and the thing that we're trying to get to the outcome of, and that makes the meeting valuable.
I think there's a bizarre persona at Atlassian that they're using to help design this.
Or if they're not, they should. But anyway, hey, I got to pull the plug on this meeting before Mike goes overboard. What an interesting and fun Techstrong Gang this was. I hope you guys watching this had as much fun as we did recording it. I'll remind you, we also have speaking of fun, we have an added feature today. We've got one of Ira Winkler's Bite Me solos coming up. So in Ira Winkler's Bite Me episode for today, Ira takes a stand against keyboard warriors who are all about showing support and expressing their opinions from the anonymity of sitting behind the keyboard there and saying it. But yet their actions don't match their walk in real life in terms of morals and ethics and stuff like this. And it's, it is. We have a holier than thou social media, echo zone, but people don't really follow that mantra in real life. So Ira's always funny with these things, but biting. So here's Ira Winkler and Bite Me.
Hi, this is Ira Winkler, and on this edition of Bite Me, I want to talk about ethics and what it actually means. And frankly, this is kind of related to the whole black hat women lampshade things, which again is so horrendous to begin with. But what bothers me most about it is all of a sudden people started showing up with what I call keyboard courage. And somebody took a picture, and I guess it's good they took the picture, but did nobody ever go ahead and decide as they walk by to stop and say, hey, this is royally fucked up? Again, I'm cursing, but literally, it's royally fucked up. And nobody ever went and approached them and say, hey, don't you think you should get this down? I don't care who thought about it. And I'm not talking about the people who work there. I'll go into this in a second, but, like the people who work there might have been too scared to point out that they're wasting a lot of money on something that's incredibly heinous. But how many people walk by the thing? I mean, I'm assuming it was like a little event in a corner or something to that effect at some side event, which it was. But the reality was, how many people walked into the event and didn't say anything? How many people walked by it and took a picture to put up on Facebook later instead of actually saying something? The issue is, and again, why I say this is ethics as opposed to anything else, there's a phrase I heard a long time ago that ethics is what you do when nobody's looking. Ethics is not something, ethics is what happens if you're in a situation that you don't think you'll get caught. That's number one. But ethics is not being, okay, let me put this up and let me start making a statement on LinkedIn after the fact. Ethics is doing something when you can do it. Now, it's great that people started saying that this was bad after the fact to a certain level, but it almost became the obligatory badge of honor. Let me join in. Because let's face it, everybody knew this was fucked up from the beginning. You didn't have to go ahead and say, I personally agree it was fucked up. That was, a lot of people are just doing that for likes, in my opinion, and you know that's true. It is fucked up, and they need to say that. But more important, you need to say it when it's going on. You need to say it when there's something that could be done about it. Now, in this case, they're saying, oh, this proves, the environment is hostile to women. I don't agree. And the reason I don't agree is because, yes, something will be royally fucked up for women especially. Women are abused constantly, and I don't want to say throughout our industry. They are put down, there's snide comments and things like that, but ethics goes into, and again, this is why ethics are important, the way I'm phrasing it. Do you do something when you witness it? Everybody all of a sudden was saying, oh, we heard that, I always heard that inside that Palo Alto was not friendly to women. I'm like, well, why didn't you say something until after this when there's no way to prove it? It's like, well, somebody told me behind the scenes. No. It's not the time for all of a sudden people come out. I knew about it all the time, but wink, wink. That tells me you're a fucking asshole without any ethics to begin with. Because if you see it and you do nothing about it, you're complicit with it. If you see it and do nothing about it until you could take a picture and put it up later, that's kind of doesn't make you the person who acts. It makes you kind of the person who wants to go ahead and have keyboard courage. If you really want to support women, stop having keyboard courage, and have courage when it matters. Have courage to stand up. Walk out. If you don't like the organization, you don't accept things from them later. You go ahead and you take I got into a discussion. It's like, well, why should I be punished when other people are doing bad things? You're not being punished. You're taking a stand. And the point is, if you really want to have ethics and you want to take a stand when something could be done about it. Because I promise you, hundreds of people walked by those women with lampshades and could have taken a stand and done something about it and walked up. And if the environment was hostile to women then, having other people come out and say, this is royally fucked up, will go ahead and have an immediate impact. Not keyboard courage later, which gets an apology, and rightfully so. Maybe they didn't realize, I don't know, I'm not going to try to justify this, but you need to take the stand when something could be done about it, not have keyboard courage after the fact. Anyway, this is Ira Winkler with this edition of Bite Me.
Ira's right, and I would have a meeting to help reform meetings, but the problem is that's counterproductive, so I'm kind of stuck in a quandary.
All right, I'm referring Mike to the Department of Justice on these.
Take a stand, Mike.
Monopoly on anti-meetings. Anyway, guys, what a great episode this has been. I appreciate you all, Camberley, Jon, Mitchell, Mike, joining in with me here today. I appreciate all of you out here watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, we have a full lineup of Techstrong TV behind this, though, and I hope you'll watch that as well. There's some really great interviews and sessions and great information there, podcasts to check out. We'll be back tomorrow for our Friday, end of the week. And if this was any indication, it's going to be a heck of an end of the week show. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel on behalf of Techstrong and Futurum Group. Thanks for joining us. You just watched Techstrong, gang.